the point of today's video is to answer one simple question, and that is, do you need to go to school in order to be a filmmaker, content creator, digital creative, etc., etc.? And my answer to that is no, not really. What's going on, guys? Juan back here today with a new video, and as always, very excited to sit down with you guys to talk about more sports creative content. If you guys are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Juan. I am a 24-year-old content creator and filmmaker based out of Toronto, Ontario, currently working full-time in the sports creative industry. Now, part of my journey into finding a full-time career as a sports creative did take me through school, but I don't necessarily think that's what you need to do these days in order to find a career, in order to work and make money off of something you love doing, whether it's photography, videography, graphic design, whether that's in sports or outside of sports. I don't necessarily think you need to go to school for it anymore. Now, I know I must sound like a bit of a hypocrite because I did go to post-secondary education. I took a media program here in Toronto for my university degree. And yeah, it definitely did help me kind of find out what I want to do. But when I really look back on it now, I don't necessarily think it's the biggest reason why I found a career in the industry. Instead, I think my career was built off of experiences outside of the classroom, meeting and networking with the right people, and just overall finding opportunities kind of by my own merit and by my own work versus just, coming out of school with a degree and getting opportunities based off of that fact alone. And having gone to university myself for a media program, I get this question asked a lot, whether if it was worth it, if people should invest in something like film school, if people should invest in something like a media program. And, I don't regret my experience at all going to university and having that experience, but I don't think you need to, especially in 2022 with the variety of resources available to you just by the internet alone. It kind of negates that whole process of having to go and get a formal education. Just because I did doesn't mean you have to. And believe me, I know so many people who didn't take that formal education route and are doing just fine when it comes to their careers as a videographer, filmmaker, any kind of creative career they chose to pursue. Just for some background info on my experience, I did go to university for 5 years. I graduated from Ryerson's RTA Sport Media program with a Bachelor of Arts. Sorry, it's not called Ryerson anymore. They actually just changed their summer to Toronto Metropolitan University. If you know, you know. I'm not gonna get too far into it. But for now, I'm just gonna call it Ryerson because that was the school. That's what it was called through my 5 years, so I'm just gonna go with that for simplicity's sake. Now, obviously, I was very fortunate and lucky to not just be able to go and do my post-secondary education, but also go to a fantastic school like Ryerson's RTA School of Media, which is a very well-known and very reputable school for media professionals and anyone who's in the broadcast industry or in the filmmaking industry. It does have a very good reputation and the name carries some weight to it. But when I really look back on the whole experience, I don't necessarily think I got any of the major career opportunities I've had so far in my life because I went to school there, but also because of what I did outside the classroom and what I had in my portfolio. Things that I've talked to you guys about, showcasing your best work, having a proper portfolio to show people your best work. I think that had as much of an advantage for me in order to grow in this career path as well as going to school. I think, they go hand in hand, but I don't think going to school was the dagger for me in any opportunity I've ever received. For full transparency, I know not everyone enjoys their university experience, but I actually had a really good time throughout my 5 years at Ryerson. I met some incredible people, some of my closest friends that I will be very close with for the rest of my life. I met incredible connections, people who I still work with and collaborate with to this day. I got to work on a lot of cool projects. But when I look back on it now, school definitely set me on the path to where I am now, but I feel like I would have found that path one way or another. It might have just taken me a little longer because when I went into university, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Now, if you're wondering what the pros are of going to film school or any kind of media program, at least in my experience, one of the biggest ones was kind of the early access to growing my network within the professional industry. I went to a program that is heavily based in the sports broadcasting world. So a lot of my professors and a lot of my TAs and, instructors were people who work and had experience in the professional sports, media industry, producers, directors, different people with different experiences. And I was able to take away so much from their experiences and having conversations with them. And just, they also were very great at bringing people, to shoots or on set to kind of learn and see what it's like to work in the sports industry in real life. And those were experiences that really shaped and kind of showed me what I wanted to do in this industry. Also, a big pro for me is that it gave me access to camera equipment, lighting, gear for the very first time in my career. I remember the first video project I did was a video feature in my first year, and that was the first time I actually picked up a camera and started filming, and that's kind of how I fell in love with everything and got here in the first place. So without school, without having that access to camera gear, because obviously I'm a university student paying for university, I didn't have the money to pay for an A7S III. I didn't have the money to pay for, the lighting of this set or my laptop. Having access to that essentially for free through my education was a huge boost for me and kind of helped me experiment and figure out what I like doing. And finally, the last pro of my university experience was never to do with gear or, school projects, professors, networks, but it was actually the opportunity I got to work with the Ryerson Rams athletic department. And a lot of you guys know that's kind of where I got my start creating sports content, and it truly became like a second home to me. The people I worked with, the athletes I got to shoot and interact with on a daily basis, just an incredible experience, and essentially the biggest door opener for me in terms of becoming a sports creative and doing what I do on a daily basis now with the NHL and what I did before with MLSE. It would have never happened if it wasn't for the door opening for me with the Ryerson Rams, and I'm giving me the opportunity to create content and shoot and just kind of enjoy the ride. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, Juan, why in the world did you tell us not to go to school at the beginning of this video, that you don't need to go to school if you had such a positive experience because it seemed like school set you up for success? I don't necessarily think it was school that set me up for success though, because I think a lot of the opportunities I've gotten in my career and where I'm at today with the NHL and having a freelance business, I think a lot of that came from how I applied myself outside of the classroom. Don't get me wrong, if you go to school, grades are important. You don't want to flunk out. But I definitely realized towards my third, fourth, and fifth year, towards the end of my university career, that C's do get degrees. And again, I think grades are important. But when I started working in the industry within my third year and kind of progressing throughout my last few years, I started to realize that, people are gonna hire you based off of your work ethic. People are gonna hire you based off of your portfolio. People are gonna hire you because you have a willingness to learn and a willingness to work hard and produce great work. And they won't really care at the end of the day what your GPA is or what you produced in school if it wasn't relevant to the line of work that you're doing. School was a great experience, but what I did outside of the classroom and what I did around school was way, way more important. Now, I know I just talked very positively about my experiences, but I want to take a step back and talk about the cons, because especially if you're considering or not really sure whether you want to take any kind of media program or film school, there are some things you need to consider that might sway your decision. The first thing is the cost of school, and formal education is not cheap. Frankly, you're going to be spending thousands of dollars to get you a degree that may or may not really be of any use to you if you want to get into this line of work of content creation and filmmaking. I could not pay for school out of pocket, so I had to take student loans for the 5 years I was there, which means I will be paying off my student debt for the next couple of years. So if you're someone who doesn't really want to deal with a financial kind of instability and stress and burden that comes with something like student loans, which can be tens of thousands of dollars depending on the school you're going to, I wouldn't recommend thinking about school. It is a huge burden. And one thing I'm going to talk about later is the fact that a lot of this education that you could get at film school or a media program, you can find online on the internet for absolutely no money at all. The final con I want to talk about is a bit of a personal one, but I feel like a lot of people will be able to relate to it, especially if you're going into some media specialized program of any sort. I definitely realized very quickly that what I wanted to do and the focus of the program were very different things. I went to a sport media program that was heavily based in the broadcast world, and 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I started, it seemed like a great career path, but also 5 years, 6 years ago, social media and content creation was not nearly as prevalent as it is now. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely skills and experiences that I'll learn from those broadcasting classes and all those roles and all those projects that we did that I still use in my day-to-day work and my day-to-day routine, but I definitely wish that the program was built more towards the digital side of things, especially looking at where we are now. Being a content creator is such a lucrative and such an amazing experience and career path, and it was just never really an option for me 5 years ago when I started, but by the time I left, I realized that that was what I wanted to do. And I think a lot of my tangible skills, like being able to shoot video and photo and being able to edit video and do graphic design, I think a lot of these skills weren't necessarily taught to me in school, to be totally honest with you guys. A lot of what I do now is essentially self-taught. And this makes for a really good segue into the biggest reason as to why I don't think you need a formal education. The biggest reason why I don't think you need to go to school in order to be a filmmaker, videographer, content creator. And that is because the digital age and the internet have changed the way not only we consume things, but how we are able to educate ourselves. And guys, for the most part, anything you want to learn towards this line of work can be found on the internet for completely free. I would be willing to bet that 95% of everything I know when it comes to filmmaking, photography, graphic design, video editing, it all comes from a platform like YouTube. This is an incredible resource that costs you $0. There are so many things I learned from this platform alone, and it's not even just videography based, but I think if you want to be finding a career in the creative industry, YouTube is the best first stop for anybody. Like literally, I learned how to shoot video from guys like Peter McKinnon and Matty Hapoya and all these guys that we know and love. These guys were teachers to me. These guys taught me how to shoot camera. These guys taught me the rule of thirds, taught me about ND filters, exposure, how to shoot into 120 frames per second. Skills that I use on a day-to-day as a sports content creator, I learned on this platform, which is the biggest reason that when I look back, I sometimes do think, yeah, I could have done it without going to school, because I've had access to a platform, to a resource like YouTube, and having access to the entire internet to learn this amazing skill and this amazing career path. When people ask me on TikTok and on YouTube and on Instagram what the best way to get started and what the best way to learn is, I say go on YouTube University. That is the way I say it. You can find anything on this platform when it comes to filmmaking, when it comes to how to use Photoshop, when it comes to how to use Premiere Pro, to what the best beginner cameras are, things I've made content about myself because I want to help educate people as well. So I think with having access to a platform like this, there is no need to pay thousands of dollars for school when you have this right at your fingertips, whether it's seeing it on your laptop or even on your phone. It's so accessible these days to learn pretty much anything about working in the creative space. And YouTube aside, I haven't even mentioned things like Instagram and TikTok in order to network and meet people. I met so many incredible creatives throughout the pandemic, people who I talk to on a daily basis now, people who I consider to be some of my closest friends ever, and people who I learn from day in and day out. And that cost me absolutely $0 to do, to send DMs, to comment on people's content, and eventually you will make organic connections. So social media kind of took the place of, networking with my professors and my classmates to networking with other creatives and people actually working day to day as freelancers, as filmmakers, as professional photographers. It is an incredible way to network and meet people that, again, does not cost you a single penny. Most of my biggest career opportunities have come through social media, whether it's seeing it on Twitter as a job posting or a team saying that they're looking for a new digital creative or videographer, et cetera, or people reaching out directly to me via Instagram or Twitter DM saying that there's a gig they want to hire me for, or people referring me through social media to someone else. The opportunities for social media and growth and networking and improving your career that way and learning about your career that way is enormous. I know I said school was great for networking, and it was. My professors and my classmates and instructors were great in giving me opportunities when they were there and letting me know about certain jobs and, small gigs here and there. But once you leave school, that's when social media becomes your biggest tool in finding those opportunities and finding those jobs. And I think also one of the biggest pros of social media is the ability just to reach out to anybody at all, and ask for help and advice. I think the accessibility we have to just random strangers on the internet is something that we should take advantage of. And don't be afraid to message people asking for help, especially if they're experts in that field. They probably will see your message, and most of the time, they're more than happy to answer the questions and help you out with anything you have. I know a ton of you guys reach out to me, and I'm not the greatest with answering my DMs, but at the same time, when I have the time and the opportunity to help someone out, I'm more than happy to, because we all wanted to learn at one point, and I'm still learning, and people who are really high up in the creative industry and the filmmaking industry are still learning too. So The accessibility we have to others is an incredible privilege that we should be able to take advantage of, and again, costs you no money whatsoever. I think I've grown and learned so much over the last 2 years, just learning from the people around me, from my friends, from my creative network, from being on sets, from, working with new people than I ever did through 5 years of university, which is pretty telling for me in terms of, where I'm at in terms of telling you guys whether or not you should go to school for this kind of work. And I know several people who never went to film school, who did undergrad degrees in something completely unrelated to the content creation world. I know people who dropped out of school halfway through because they realized it wasn't for them. And I know people who didn't go to school altogether, who didn't do college or university. And all these people, some of my closest friends, are doing just fine. They're actually incredibly successful and some of the hardest working and most talented people I know. And I think they're living, breathing examples as to exactly why you don't need to go to school in the first place to get into this work, into this industry. Now, to wrap things up and bring everything full circle, like I said at the start, I did go and have a formal education at a media program. I did graduate with a Bachelor of Arts in sport media. Did it help me at first? Yes, for sure. But I don't necessarily think I needed it at all looking back on it. To be totally honest, I feel like I could have dropped out by my 4th year and have figured it out by myself. I think what school let me do was pick up a camera for the first time and kind of realize that it was what I wanted to do. But on the other side of that, I feel like at some point in my life, I would have picked up a camera for the first time and realized I loved it nonetheless. So that is something I eventually could have discovered without having gone to university. I know it probably would have made my journey a little bit longer, but I know that this kind of work is what I was meant to do and I truly love it. So I feel like one way or another, I was gonna find my way here. But at the same time, I don't regret going to school because of the experiences, and I fully understand and accept that it was just part of the journey that I was meant to go on. But for other people like yourself, if you're currently trying to figure out whether you want to enroll in film school or take a media program at a college or university, you need to understand that the internet and social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube have made education around this line of work so incredibly accessible, and that the biggest thing that stands in your way if you choose not to go to school is just your work ethic and your wanting to learn. If you want to learn new things and if you want to be successful in this career, it is all in your hands to sit down, learn, watch YouTube videos, reach out to people, and just learn with the resources that are easily accessible to you, which are easily affordable as well. School is not the only way these days to make a living and to find jobs and opportunities, especially if you want to be any sort of content creator in this day and age. If you choose to go to college or university or film school, that's amazing. And I'm really glad you felt like that was the best choice for you, because I personally had a fantastic experience when I did it myself. However, just don't feel pressured into doing it. Don't feel like it is the only route, because like I said, it really isn't the only way to get into this line of work. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. As you guys can tell, this is a topic I'm very passionate about, having had experiences going to school in a media program. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever about film school or going to a media program, whether or not it's the best choice for you, feel free to ask me down in the comments below. I would love to help you guys out, because I remember when I was in your place, especially if you're just getting out of high school and trying to figure out what you want to do, this can be really intimidating. So drop your questions below. I would love to help you guys out. If you guys enjoyed today's video, if you guys took anything away from it, make sure to give it a like down below. And if you guys are new here or you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so, because I would really appreciate it. That does it for today's video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.